Hi everybody, in this video I'm going to show you the 2023 QSafe version. This is aimed specifically at the South African health and safety industry. If you're from a different country, please go to our website and select an option that is more suitable for your needs. In this video I'm going to show you what a new user will see right from the very beginning to allow them to see how easy it is to set up a safety file for submission to a client. Once the program is opened up, you'll select the product option. Most likely going to be the standard. The pro version is aimed at people who do files for a range of other people, multiple trading names. We put in our company trading name, one letter per block, with an underscore where you need a space between a word. You add your company logo, your company details, and you put in some names. Your next step is to add in names to the appointments. So these are what we call the default appointments. So the system will store these, so when you create a new project, this information will get pulled through. It can get edited later if you want to change it or make it more specific to a site, but it saves you time later on. So you have one person appointing another into a role. And these are the recommended ones for a South African safety file. If you need to add more, you can do so. And likewise, delete what does not apply to you. And we now set up. And what the system does is creates a safety management system, which is your first project. But this is all about your company safety management. And this is where you can prepare your commonly used documents, your risk assessments, your safe work procedures. But for this demonstration, to save time, I'm going to go straight on to showing you how to create a new project, because that's what you need to deliver to your client. We select new project. We put in the project name or the name of the site. And please keep the name short. Make sure the name fits comfortably inside this block, because that's important when we are going to show that name on the watermark of various documents. Put too much in there, it's not going to fit in, it's going to look terrible. We put the client name in and off we go. So what we're faced with now is a choice of indexes. So this is one of the great new features whereby you can choose a standard one. And if you're a new user, we recommend you do that. Choose the most popular one. There are other indexes there, and you can also add in your own indexes suitable to your company, or more commonly used is add in an index specific to your client's requirements. And they need that because they want to match the numbers of the index against their numbers so they can easily check your safety file. So in this case, we're going to choose the standard one. And a bit of advice here is that always ask the client for their health and safety specifications. So that'll tell you what they require and what format they want, what the index is, and what documents they require from you. If they don't do that, then you can provide a more standard one like we've issued here. And these are well proven in the South African health and safety market. Thousands of safety files have been produced over the years based on these indexes, because the law doesn't actually state what a safety file must look like. You have the acts and the regulations that tell you what they want, but we have to go on best common practice, and this is what we're giving you here. So we choose this project. We are not going to check our expiry dates, which are very important because we can't have a document that is expired, but to save time, we're not going to do that. But the system does show that, provided they've been entered. And then we have our home page. On the home page, we can access most of the components of the system, and you can access those at any time and move between them. Assuming you are a new user to QSafe, you don't know a lot about the health and safety industry, which is why we're here to help you with that. We're going to go straight into the safety file index. And there we have the commonly used documents. So when you start at the beginning, we're going to go to the cover page, and by scrolling through all these items, we're going to go through every single one of these documents and make sure they're dealt with correctly, which allows us to print. So we click the preview button, and what you see on the left hand side of the page is what's going to be printed, and what's on the right hand side is going to be your workings, and you can edit these to suit your project. And bear in mind, please, it's got to be site specific. Make sure the information there is correct for your site, otherwise your safety file will fail and get thrown out and stop you from going to site until it's fixed. So important, check on things like your dates, your locations, all the content, go through it carefully, make sure it's correct. In all these blocks, you can edit them, you can put in addresses and change your dates. And this information over here can be edited from these blocks on the side. And this goes throughout the product. Please note, there are information buttons at the top that will help guide you with giving you information on what to do as well. We choose next. So this is our index that is going to be printed. If we're going to delete a document out of that list, it will no longer appear on the index. Likewise, we can add documents if required. We have emergency telephone lists, enter the names of the relevant people here, and then we add in our company documents. So in all of these, we right click, and documents need to be scanned as a JPEG, which is a picture. I've created a few sample documents, and in this case, a public liability is often 3 documents, so we can scan the 3 different pages separately. We then add in the expiry date and the policy number of the document. We do the same with our company registration, confirmation of bank account, tax clearance, BBEE certificate. If you are a principal contractor, you'll need to fill in this document for your subcontractors, but if you're not a principal contractor, you'll delete this one off your list. So remember item number 10, we're going to delete it later and we'll show you that. We'll set up the company organizational structure, what they call the organogram, and by editing it, you can add the names of the people there, and as well as the various categories that are needed within your site. If you are not involved in construction, things like site supervisor do not apply to you. You can edit that heading here to, let's say, just call it a supervisor, and it will change over here. So this program is very much designed for construction and non-construction, for factories, for manufacturing, for landscaping, hotels, anything you want. So we're now in our section of statutory requirements. These are items specifically required by law. Previous section were items that are good to have, required by the site, but not specifically stated by law, but these are. So this was the letter of good standing, we put that in. There's an option of a subcontractor agreement if you're employing subcontractors. If you're the subcontractor, these are provided to you, you don't need to fill them in. And then we have our appointments. Now you recall we did that a list earlier. Now I see the names have already been added in because they were part of our default appointments that we set up at the start of the project. Your default appointments can be edited in the appointments section as in the default section over there. Now in the case of the CEO, there's no appointer because it's a responsibility, we take it out. And now we're adding it one signature line, whereas if we add in a name there, we'll get a second signatory line. So on the appointments, we have responsibilities, which you can edit. We also have competency, which is a competency declaration. So the person appointing the other person declares that person is suitably competent to do the job, and the person receiving the document is saying that they believe they are suitably competent to perform the task. Certain competencies need a certificate, and to do that you will right click and put in a certificate, which will then overwrite over the text. In the event of you needing additional appointments, you go into the appointments section. There is appointments library with a whole range of appointments which you can visit at some time. But for your project appointments, these are the ones that we've predetermined are the correct ones, and for 90% of our client, they're going to be using these documents. But feel free to delete them if not needed. And then at any time we go back to our project index or the home page, and we can find out where we were. We appointed the responsible person. That is where the owner is allowed to appoint somebody else to be in charge of the site with their responsibilities. And if you do need to produce competency documents, which most South African sites do, please select the option to add in a competency document, which means it'll get printed when the time comes to print all the documents. All the appointments are similar, we can get through those. And then we add our workers for site. Now it's flagged that we haven't added any workers for the job. We're going to do it now. And so now we're going to add in who's going to go to site. So you could have 20 people within the company, but only 4 are going to this particular site. So we only want to focus on those 4 because those are the names you're going to see on some of the documents. So in this case, we are going to choose all 3 people because all are going to go to site. We continue, and that's fine. So let us now look at people in greater detail. We added people's names in, but if we go back to the home page to the personnel section, our people are there, but we can now add in copies of their identity documents, personal details, face photographs, driver's license, and very important training skills. So with your training skills, you can add in the actual skill itself, and then you can add in a training document. And in doing so, we then build up our training register, which is a great record of all our staff training, the expiry dates, their achievements. This is where you can keep your safe work procedures that are presented, Toolbox talks, and if the client calls your training register, you can produce that and it'll look very professional. So going back to where we were, we carry on through to the risk assessments. Now, risk assessments are often confusing to people and tend to scare people off, but it doesn't have to be the case. Risk assessment is a logical approach to looking at what hazards you're facing on site with your activities, what level of risk there is, and what you're going to be doing to make sure that nobody gets injured. And the goal is to make sure the risk on site is as low as possible. A high risk on site is unacceptable. You need to work out what to do to make sure there is no high risk. So the system comes with a range of pre-made risk assessments done for various other projects, and you are welcome to use those. Use them as a guideline, use them, edit them, and with the risk assessment you'll set the date that it's valid for. Generally about 6 months, 6 to 12 months is common. And then we have the detailed risk assessment here. You can choose to have it in grayscale or color. So if you have a color printer, use that. If you don't, rather use grayscale. And how it works here is all these items here can be moved around. You can change the position of it with these buttons on the side. You can add in a line, and we have a library of activities. Wide range of activities for you to choose from, and of course you can add in your own. If you need to add in an activity, you click this button on the side, and if you know the activity number, you can just put the reference number in there. If we don't, let's say we're going to dig, we find, right, yeah, digging a trench not exceeding 1 meter, that'll suit us fine, so we just choose that one, and it pops it in over there with some relevant information. Remember, it needs to be site specific. You need to now check the content of that it applies to you. So these are the common risks here and the rating. So what they call this is the raw risk. So this happens if it's just a trench. Then we have what they call the controls. What are we going to do to make sure that nobody's injured? And you can put as much information there as is relevant. And then provided everything else is done according to those controls, what is your risk rating? And it needs to be low to medium, but trying it as low as possible. If it's still high, then you need to go back and look at other ways to do the job more safely. So you can delete a row, and you can check the order of your row by view the order, and you can see the order of things there, and you can move things up and down. And if there's nothing there that's suitable for you, we suggest you go there and create a new one, of which we can do a project risk assessment. We add activity, which in this case is making tea. Category there is catering. And we could go from starting with doing nothing, or we can use the risk assessment builder, and we click on that. And what we do here is run through these activities and click on things that might be relevant to what we're doing. So we're not doing block and pass, we're not doing those. But here we are working in a kitchen, we're using kitchen equipment. We are using knives, we're preparing meals, we are serving, we are cleaning the area, and making tea, making coffee. And you can choose from all those items there to build up your risk assessment. And once it's done, we preview that. We set the order to what suits us. And remember, we can change these at any time. We sort the order. If we like the order, we then create the risk assessment. And as quickly as that, it's done. That obviously applies to information that's already on the system. If you need to add in your own items, of course, you can do that. You add into your category. You put in the hazards, what can come as a result. And you see it does give you a guideline as to what they're asking for. And once it's done, we can complete that. So once done, you can print it and in color or grayscale. And you have the option of producing a sign sheet as well as the risk assessment. Generally, yes, you are going to do both. We're going to include a sign sheet as well. So that is your risk assessment there in its raw format. And then there's a sign sheet there for people to sign that you've communicated the information on the risk assessment to them. So on anything in the health and safety file, communication is really, really important, because it's all very well that the boss knows what the risks are on site. Has this been communicated to the workers that are on site? And do they understand the risks? Do they understand what's going to be done about it? And once that is complete, they must then sign it off for them to understand that they have accepted those risks and they will work in that manner on site. So that does two things. That means firstly, they are communicated the risks and know what to do properly. And secondly, if there is an incident, it does help to protect the company against litigation, prosecution, which can come about if you have not communicated information and done your risk assessments properly. So once you've completed your risk assessment, and you can add in several others, you can view others there, and you can add in a second one if you want. Some clients might want a range of risk assessments for the different aspects of what you're doing. Others are happy to include all the risks in one assessment and produce one risk assessment document for the activities you're performing on site. Our next section is the method statement. So on the method statements, there is a range of them to choose from. Again, you can use them, edit them, or create your own, or you can simply go and copy paste from a document into there to be able to create the method statement, and follow the guidelines of what it's asking you to do to build a method statement. There is a method library of all the methods available on the system as a sample, and you can go into these and change them and use them. So when you're doing your method statement, you can find the one you want. Let's choose that one there, and it'll bring through the content. And there again, read the content to make sure it is specific to what you're doing. You can use parts, you can delete parts, add parts. That's your choice. If you're in non-construction, the format is slightly different. So POPIA has become quite a big thing around the world, protection of information. And what we ask you to do is go and create a POPIA sign sheet. So this should be given to all your employees, specifically the ones going on site. And it is now asking them to authorize that you share certain information about them on site. For example, medical certificates, identity documents, driving licenses, and the employee will sign those. So what we're going to do here is we're going to select these employees here and print those marked yes. And you'll get that person then to sign that document, and it will now get saved as one of their training documents or in the POPIA signed documents section. And you save the document here. Because a POPIA document is not a project-specific document, it is a company document and can be used for multiple sites without changing it. We then move on to the fall protection plan. So if there's any risk of falling, you need to do a fall protection plan. So we either have no fall risk or a range of other levels of risk. So let's start off with the A-framed ladders. So in doing so, if you select that, all the information relevant to using an A-frame ladder comes up, and there again, please read through it and check that it applies to you. If you're going to be using an extension ladder as well, rather include that and just state that you're going to be using an A-frame ladder too. So then we have safe operating procedures, a whole long list available for your use, and you can add your own. A safe operating procedure is about operating a piece of equipment. For example, you're going to operate a chainsaw. And this is all about checking the fuel and what you check for and do this thing, how to use it, what PPE and so on. And that should be presented to your workers who are working with chainsaws. Each person needs to sign their own certificate, and then you scan that and save it in that employee training section, and that is acknowledgement that they understand how to use it correctly. Now our next section is the safe work procedure. Now, unlike the safe operating procedure, we operate the chainsaw. The safe work procedure will cover things like how to cut down a tree. So that is your work procedure. So you'll set everything up, you cut it down, you break, what barricades you do, what safety systems are in place, your PPE that is required, the method you're going to do to perform it, what training is required, and this will then form your safe work procedure. And again, you can add in as many as you want, and there's a signed document for people to sign that they've been instructed on the safe work procedure for a certain item. And almost everything you do within your business needs a safe work procedure. So if you're working in a machine shop, you're doing milling, you need a safe working procedure. If you're welding, it's a different safe work procedure. You need to set these up and do so with the help of your workers to make sure it's written correctly and it goes into your file, because when you get a new employee coming in, the first thing you want to do is the safe work procedure so they understand how to do that job safely. Our next section, we look at medical certificates. And now on medical certificates in South Africa, you only need what's called the Annexure 3. The other documents are considered personal and private and relate to doctor-patient confidentiality. You don't want to show those. You might want to keep them on record. That's fine. These other blocks are here. But the one we're going to see here is the Annexure 3. You're often required to keep a copy of the Health and Safety Act in your safety file. Likewise with the construction regulations, if you're in the construction industry, or other regulations that are specific to the activity you're performing. We cover emergency procedures. There again, standard documents which you can now edit to suit your application. And then we get on to Toolbox talks. So Toolbox talks are in-house safety discussions which you can present to your workers, and these should be done at least once a week, preferably on a fixed day before you go into site. 10 minutes, run through the items on the list and do the ones that are common to you. Again, there's a whole range of them there for you to use, and just make sure they're relevant to what you're doing. We then have a hazardous substances register, and that's all about anything that is hazardous. Petrols, fuels, chemicals, poisons. Write them all down and make sure you have the safety data sheet, which you can get off the internet, and include that in your file. There is information here on what to do. We have daily safe task instruction sheets. These are where a more senior person, like a supervisor or a manager, will come to site, let's say once a week, and run through this checklist and review your workers. It could be individually or as a group, and check that they are actually doing things properly, and put in comments there as to what can be done to improve the way the workers work on site. So at your next meeting with your workers, you can go through those points and say, right, went to site, found these things wrong. This is how we're going to do it in future. Likewise with a document called the PTO, the Planned Task Observation. It's also a matter of viewing people on site. We do a ladder register, hand tool register, portable power tool register, and a PPE register to record all the items that have been issued as far as PPE goes. And you can also make a note of when it might be due for reissue. You can go onto site and check that your staff are using PPE correctly and record it on this document. There's a first aid box inspection, and you're also required to keep a set of what they call WCL2 documents. That is an employer's report of an accident. So if there is an accident, you can fill it in immediately, and when that person goes into the hospital, you can submit these documents. So it becomes the responsibility of injury compensation. Similarly, the Annexure 1, it's an employer's record of an accident, and we have a register of incidents, accidents, and near-miss events. Everything should be recorded here, and why that's important is because it allows management to work out what went wrong and what's going to be done to make sure it doesn't happen again. And this is all about making sure that your workers get home safely every day. Of course, there's a range of policies, the most important one being the occupational health policy of the company, which is signed by the manager and can also be signed by all the staff members as well. And with all these policies, these are recommended, commonly used ones, generally okay, but you can always add in your own, change them to suit your needs. And of course, we have a document library with a whole range of them that you can use if needed. We need to do the safety plan, and that covers a wide range of aspects which summarizes what you're going to be doing within your business to make sure that everything's going to be okay. And there again, these are fairly logical, go through them. But this is also where people get into trouble because they don't read the contents and they have stuff there that is not relevant to them. And this is where many people fail their safety files because they go there and, for example, there's reference to a full plan, but there's no full risk. So all you just take that out and then it goes away. And it shows that you have considered it, but there's no full risk. But go through all the items and check in what's there, please. So that page is construction. There is also a non-construction safety plan as well, which has a bit of different content. And of course, you can just add in a custom one. If you've got your own set of documents, you can copy paste them in there. And so you don't need to have to follow the QSafe format. At this point, we need to keep a copy of the client health and safety specifications. And as I mentioned earlier, ask your client for their specifications to what they want. So you don't want a situation where you produce a safety file and the client says, oh, no, we want all these other things thrown in there as well. And it's the client's responsibility to submit this to you when they're requesting a tender from you, a pricing. Because you need to allow for certain things. So if they have a special requirement, you need a qualified health and safety officer on your site, you need to add that into your budget. So they can't come afterwards and just suddenly throw it at you if they haven't asked for it in the first place. But make sure you get that from them, please. So a few other policies: drugs and alcohol, HIV, COVID, environmental plan. And the final document here is a sign sheet for the policy. So instead of having to sign each policy over and over again, we produce them here and we print one sign sheet that allows you to cover all these different items. At this point, you can print all documents. Of course, you can go to any time and go to any of these sections, Toolbox Talks. From the home page, you can jump in and out, and a more experienced user will do this, and especially for maintaining information, it's much easier to go into them from here. But for a project-specific one, we can go into the index. Now, I just want to show you quickly what happens is if you want to now change the content of your index. So if you want to change the content of our index, we go there and edit the index, and it becomes a lot more detailed. But now you can go there, and we spoke about the appointment of the contractor. That doesn't apply to us, so we simply delete that, and we didn't need that supervisor there. But now see what's happening is some things will turn yellow. So we need to just reset our page order, and then just reset our index as well. So if we look at our index, we reset the index, and everything gets straightened up so it all looks good again. So let's say you want to add in a new item to the system. We go to add onto the project index, and there are about currently 450 items to choose from there. Let's say we want a workshop manager. We find there, and right, there's one there, and we can select that. It warns you that it's added onto the list. It needs to be adjusted, and it is there, workshop manager. So we just need to now change its page index and its sort order. There's various buttons up the top there to do that. Look at the instructions here. Sort page order first, that's that one there. Update the categories, that's this one over there. And check and update the index, which is that one there. And some of these can be done automatically, but if you're doing customized index numbers, you need to put in your own ones. If you want to create your own index, we go into index options, and you can now create a new master index, and that is very good if you're doing one specifically for a client to match their index numbers. But for that, I'd suggest there is a separate video that goes into greater detail that teaches you on that one. But for now, unless otherwise advised, use the standard and most popular index. So remember, from our standard index, we can preview any document, and we can also print that individual item by these buttons here. So that is all we're going to cover for now. There are other videos available to guide you, and you're welcome to give us a call or send us a message or an email and we'll assist you where we can. Thank you. Goodbye.